Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tanaya Karuna Gana Ganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalida Loka Tranaya Karunya Gana Ganatam Praptasya Kalyana Gurnanavasya Vande Guru Sri Charanara Vrindam Gurnanavasya Vande Guru Sri Charanara Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Varitramadhyam Manasura Sena Mahaprabhu ki Tana Nitya Gita Varitramadhyam Romanchakam Pasru Tarangavajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shri Vigrara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramarjanado Juktasya bhaktamsa niyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Niyunjatopi Vande Chaturvedha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Satvana Triptan Hari Bhakta Sangha Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasada Satvana Triptan Kridvaiva Tripti Bhajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shiradikama Davayara Para Madhura Leela Gunarupa Namna Shiradikama Pratikshana swa dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Nekunja Yono Ratikeli Siddhai Jayali Vere Joktir Apekshaneya Tatrati Daksha Ati Balabhasya Bande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Sakcha Dharitena Shamasta Shashre Rukta Tatava Vyataeva Sadhuve Sakya Shashre Kintu Prabharja Priya Eva Tasya Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutapi Yasya Prasada Yasya Prasada Nagati Dayam Stovam Tasya Yasatri Sandhyam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Vande Gurashi Charanara Vrindam Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Niti Namine Nama Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Pachata Desha Tarine Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunnavadi Pachata Desha Tarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Hare Namah, Krishna Jadavaye Namah, Jadavaye Madhavaye Kesavaye Namah, Gopal Govinda Ram Shri Madhusudan, Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan, Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita, Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita, Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raguna, Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Raguna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Bo, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Shri Radha Nila Madhav, Radha Nila Madhav, Radhe. Jaya Jagannath, Jaya Baladeva, Jaya Subhadrama, Jaya Sudarshan Chakra. Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaura Pramanande. Jai Vishwapara Paramahansa Prabhupada Ashtottara Sarasishya Marji Divine Grace. Avacharavinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON Pratishta Viviti Samstava Kachara Vaishnava Siramani Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Gaurya Guru Varga Patita Udhara ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatana Bhattara Gunata Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasa Guna Sadguru Swami Prabhu ki jai. Nama Acharya Srila Haridas Thakur ji ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavarind ki jai. Prem se Koho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktavind ki jai. Jai Param Dayal Shri Nityananda Prabhu ki jai. Premanama Sankirtane Ka Janaka Prema Purushottama Shri Sachinandan Shriman Gauranga Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Gaur Hari Mahavrinaya Avatar ki jai. Golokira Premadhan Hari Nam Sankirtan Jaga ki jai. Yoga Dharma Hari Krishna Mahamantra ki jai. Brihat Midanga Transcendental Book Distribution Seva ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopukna Radha Kund Samakund Giriraj Govardhan ki jai. Shri Vrajapum Vrindavan Mathurdham ki jai. The Lordship Shri Shri Radha Nilamadhava ki jai. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Ekachakradham ki jai. Paramakurun Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki jai. Shri Purushottama Kitra Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Shri Shri Jagannath Swami Baladev Prabhu Smaspadra Devi Sudarshan Chakra Bhagavan ki jai. Bhakti Sarva Vigna Vinashana Kanushingari Bhagavan ki jai. Sitaram Lakshman Bhakta Hanuman ji ki jai. Jaganga Mai Jamuna Mai ki jai. Tulasi Maharani Vrindi Devi Bhakti Devi ki jai. Shri Mathuradharani ki. Shamaveta Bhakta Vrindi ki jai. Nitai Gauri Pramanande. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories to the assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri, Shri Guru and Shri Gaurang Hari. You want to sing a shingle or two?
Namaste Narasimhaya Prahalada Lada Daine Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha Dankana Kalaye Ito na singha parato na singha Yato yato yamitato na singha Bahir na singha, Hriday na singha Narasingha Mardim Sharanam Prapadye Tavakara Kamalavare Nakham Adbhuta Shringham Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tano Bringam Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare भद्रिता नरहरि रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय लक्ष्मी नरसिंह जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव नरसिंहदेव जय नरसिंहदेव जय प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज जय प्रहलाद महाराज नरसिंह भगवान की जय प्रहलाद महाराज की जय गौ प्रेमानंदी हरि
Jai Tulasi Deva Jai Sava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prare Satavatai Jai Tulasi Deva Jai Sava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prare Vrindai Tulasi Devai Jai Sava Satya Vishnu Bhakti Prare Satavatai Shrimati Tulasi Maharani Vrindai
नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः नमो नमः तुलसी कृष्णा प्रेयसी नमो नमः राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो ए अभिलाषी राधा कृष्णा सेवा पावो ए आशी जे तो मारा शरण लो तारा वंचा पूर्णा हो कृपा कोरी कोरो तारे वृंदावन वासी मोरा अभिलाष विलास कुंज दियो वास नयने हरिवो सदा जुगल रूपरासी एहि निवेदना धारो साखीर अनुगाता कोरो सेवा अधिकारा दिए कोरो निज दासी दीना कृष्णा दासे कोए ए जीना मोरा होए श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा जीना भासी श्री राधा गोविंदा प्रेमे सदा जीना भासी यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे यानि कानि च पापानि ब्रह्माहत्यादिकानि च तानि तानि प्रनाशन्ति प्रदक्षिणा पदे पदे Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani, Jaya Tulsi Maharani. Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi. Nityay Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nityay Gaura Hari Bol, Nityay Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nityay Gaura Hari Bol. Srimati Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki Jai.
Beloved Krishna, I ask for you again. I desire to extend the service to Sri Radha and Krishna. Devotees show to be of Krishna's fulfillment. Know your myself and him with his resident open down. My desire is that you also give me a residence where the groves of Sri Vrindavan now. Thus within my vision, I will always behold you, Vaishnava Radha and Krishna. I dare you to make me a follower of Kalagyan and birthright. Please give me the privilege of devotional service and make me honored servant. It is very important and lowly serving Krishna praise. May I always sing in love to Sri Radha and Govinda. Srimati Tulsi Maharani ki Jai. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Sri Krishna ki Jai. Deito Bhartanam Bhajanam Bhava Mahada Shri Saranam Vidya Anandam Vivardhanam Sitaram Ram Saraswati Glory to the Shri Krishna Sankirtana, which cleanses the heart of the dust accumulated for years and extinguishes the fire of conditional life to repeated birth and death. This Sankirtan moment is the primary benediction for humanity at large. God is praised and raised, the benediction moon. It is the light of all transcendental knowledge. It increases the transcendental bliss and enables us to fully taste the nectar for which we are always anxious. O my Lord, your holy name alone can render all benediction to living beings, and thus you have hundreds of millions of names like Krishna and Govind. In these transcendental names you have invested with transcendental energies. There is not even hard and fast rules for chanting these names. O my Lord, out of kindness you enable us to easily approach you by your holy names, but I am so unfortunate that I have no attraction for them. Once you chant the holy name of the Lord in humble state of mind, thinking oneself a lord and stroll in the street, one should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and should be ready to offer our respect to others. In such state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. O Almighty Lord, I have no desire to accumulate wealth, nor do I desire beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I only want your causes devotion service birth after birth. O son of Maharaj Nanda Krishna, I am your eternal servitor. Yet some or other am fallen in this ocean of birth and death. Please pick me up from this ocean of death and place me as one of the atoms at your lotus feet. O my Lord, or with my eyes will be decorated with tears of love flowing constantly when I chant your holy name. And with my voice
and when will the hairs on my body stand on end,
the recitation of your name.
O Govinda, feeling your separation,
I am considering moments to be like 12 years or more. Tears are flowing from my eyes like torrents of rain, and I feel all vacant in the world in your absence.
I know no one but Krishna is my Lord, and he shall remain so, even if he handles roughly by his embrace, or makes me broken-hearted by not being present before me. He is completely free to do anything and everything, for he is always my worshipful Lord, unconditionally. Sri Chaitanya Siksastakam Ki Jai.
There have been offenses in our chanting the holy name of the Lord that must be avoided. They are as follows. 1.
Blaspheming devotees
who dedicate their lives to
propagate the holy names of the Lord.
2.
Consider names of the demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent names of Lord Vishnu.
3.
To disobey the orders
of
of
the
the
spiritual
spiritual
master.
master.
4.
Blaspheme the Vedic literature or literature pursuant to the Vedic version.
5.
To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna as
be in
imagination.
6.
To give some interpretation
on the holy name of the Lord. 7.
to commit sinful activities on the strength of chanting the holy name of the Lord.
8.
To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are offered in Vedas as fruitive activities or karma kanda.
9.
To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name.
10.
To not have complete faith in the chanting of holy names, and to maintain material attachments, even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive while chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema.
Now let us
For a most humble obeisance unto all the Vaishnavas, devotees of the Lord. They are just like desire trees, they can fulfill the desires of everyone,
and they are full of
compassion for fallen conditioned souls. Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Vaishnava Thakur Ki Jai. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guru Valuchani Srimad Bhagavatam Raj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namah Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Janmadhyasya yato niviyad vitaratascha tesva vigyaswarat.
Janmadhyasya yatam vayaditaratascha tesva vigyaswarat.
Tene brahma hridaya adhikavaye muyanti yat surayaha.
Tene brahma hridaya adhikavaye muyanti yat suraya.
Tejo varimidam yata vinimaya yatra trisargo mrisha.
Tejo varimidam yata vinimayo yatra trisargo mrisha.
Dhamnasvena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi.
Dhamnasvena sada nirastakuhakam satyam param dhimahi.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva.
O all-pervading personality Godhead.
O all-pervading personality
I offer my respectful obeisances unto you.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto you.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
And the primeval cause of all causes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes.
Of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
And he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him.
It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
It is he only who first imparted Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji.
The original living being.
The original living being.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation.
As one is bewildered by the illusory representation.
Of water seen on fire on land seen on water.
Of water seen on fire, land seen on the water.
Only because of him do the material universes.
Only because of him do the material universe.
Temporarily manifested by the reactions of the three modes of nature.
Temporarily manifested by the reaction of the three modes of
Appear
nature.
factual, although they are unreal.
Appear factual, although they are
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna.
Who is eternally existent in transcendental abode.
Who is eternal existence of the transcendental abode.
Which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world.
Which is forever free from the illusory representation of the
I
material
meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth.
Dharma projita kaitravudra.
Dharma prajita kaitavutra.
Paramo nirmatsunam sitam.
Paramo nirmatsunam
Vedyam vastavam atra vastu.
Vedyam vastavam atra
Shivadam
vastu.
tapatrayon mulanam.
Shivadam tapatrayon.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Srimad Bhagavate Mahamuni Krite.
Kimva Purir Ishvaraha.
Kimva Purir Ishvaraha.
Sadyo Hridi Aburuddhitetra.
Sadyo Hridi Aburuddhitetra.
Krite Bihi Sususubhistakshana. Completely reject all religious activities which are materially motivated.
Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth.
This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest
which is
truth.
understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart.
Which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in the heart.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all.
Such truth uproots the threefold miseries.
Such a truth uproots the threefold
This
miseries.
beautiful Bhagavatam, compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity,
It's a beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva's maturity.
is sufficient in itself for God
It's
realization.
sufficient itself for God realization.
What is the need of any other scripture?
What is the need of the other scripture?
As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam,
As soon as one attentively, submissively hears the message
by
of
this
Bhagavatam,
culture of knowledge,
by this culture of
the
knowledge,
Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
the Supreme Lord is established within his heart.
Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam,
Nigama kalpataror galitam phalam,
sukhamukad amrita dravya samritam,
Shukamukhad amrita dravya
pibata
samritam,
Bhagavatam rasam alayam,
Pibata bhagavatam
mahor
rasamayam,
aho raska bhuvibhavukaha.
Murahurasika bhuvibabuka.
O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam,
O expert and thoughtful men, relish my
the
Bhagavatam.
mature fruit of the desired true Vedic literatures.
The mature fruit of the desired true Vedic
It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami.
eliminated from the lips of Shishukadeva Goswami.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful.
Although its nectarian juice is already relishable for all,
Although the nectarian juice was so relishable for all,
including liberated souls.
including liberated souls.
Shinvatam Swakata Krishna,
Shrivatam Swakata Krishna.
Punya Shravana Kirtana,
Shrivatam
Hridyantaksto Hyabadrani,
Vidyantasto Hyabhadrani.
Vidunoti Suhitsatam.
Vidu no Tisuritsatam.
To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures,
To hear about Krishna from the Vedic
or to
literature,
hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita,
or to hear from it directly to the Bhagavad
is
Gita,
itself righteous activity.
it is self-righteous
And
activity.
for one who hears about Krishna,
And one who hears about Krishna,
Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart,
Lord Krishna is dwelling within everyone.
acts as a best wishing friend,
acts as the best wishing friend,
and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him.
and purifies the devotees constantly engages in hearing.
Nastapresu abhadresu
Nastapesha Bhagreshu
nityam bhagavata sevaya
Nityang Bhagavata Sevaya
bhagavati uttamasloke
Bhagavati Uttamasloke
bhaktir bhavati naistaki.
Bhakti Bhavati Nastaki.
In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge.
In this way, the devotee naturally develops dormant transcendental knowledge.
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam
and from the
and from
devotees,
the devotees,
he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord.
he becomes fixed in devotional service of the Lord.
Tadarajastamo bhava
Tadarajastamo Bhava
kamalobhadayaschaye
Kamalobhadayaschaye
chita itarinabidam
Chaitaitaranavidam
tvam sattve prasidati.
Stitam Save Prasidati.
By development of devotional service,
By development of devotional
one
service,
becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance,
one becomes free from the modes of passion and
and
ignorance,
thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
and thus material lust and avarice are diminished.
Evam prasana manaso
Evam prasanamana
bhagavad bhakti yogataha
Bhagavad Bhakti Yogata
bhagavad tattva vijnanam
Bhagavad Tattva Vijnana
sangasya jayate.
Mukta Sangha Sajayate.
When these impurities are wiped away,
When these impurities are wiped
the
away,
candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
becomes enlivened by devotional service,
and understands the science of God perfectly.
understands the science of God perfectly.
Vidyate hridaya krantis
Vidyate Udaya Granti
chidyante sarva samsaya
Chidyante Sarva Samsaya
siyante chasya karmani
Chiyante Chasakarmani
ista evat manishvare.
Rusta Evadmanishwari.
Thus Bhakti Yoga severs the hard knot of material affection
Thus the Bhakti Yoga severs the heart of the material
and
affection
enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagam,
and enables one to come at once to the stage of Samsham Samangramam,
understanding the supreme absolute truth, personality of Godhead.
understanding the supreme absolute true personality of Godhead.
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness
Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from devotees in Krishna consciousness
can one understand the science of Krishna.
can one understand the science of Krishna.
Shri Shri Guru Vastika prayers ki jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it.
The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as the cloud pours water on the forest fire to extinguish it.
So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence.
So the spiritual master delivers the material afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material
I offer my
existence.
respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master is an ocean of auspicious qualities.
Offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious
Chanting
qualities.
the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments.
chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical
The
instruments.
spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan moment of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Because he's relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind.
Because he's relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind.
Sometimes his hair stands on end.
Sometimes his hair stands on
He
end.
feels quivering in his body.
He feels quivering in his body.
And tears flow from his eyes like waves.
And tears flow from his eyes like
I offer my
waves.
respectful obeisance to Lotus Feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna.
The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and
He
Krishna.
also engages his disciples in such worship.
He also engages disciples in such worship.
They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments,
clean their temple,
clean their temple,
and perform other similar worship of the Lord.
and perform others worship of the
I
Lord.
offer my respectful obeisance to the Lotus Feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food.
The spiritual master is also offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food.
Analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked.
And that is that which is liquid, drunk, and sucked.
When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada,
When the spiritual master sees that devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasad,
he is satisfied.
he is
I
satisfied.
offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual
The
master.
spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava.
The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava,
and their qualities, names, and forms.
and their qualities, names, and
The
forms.
spiritual master aspires to relish these at every morning.
The spiritual master aspires to relish this at every moment.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tastes or arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana.
The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving
I
affairs
offer my most
within the
humble,
groves of Vrindavan.
I offer my most humble obeisance unto the Lotus Feet of such a spiritual master.
I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master.
The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he's the most confidential servitor of the Lord.
The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord.
This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities.
This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities.
Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet of such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna.
Therefore, I offer my humble obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement.
Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master.
Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master.
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance unto the Lotus Feet of my spiritual master.
At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of my spiritual master.
Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai, Ishvara Parama Krishna Sachitananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam.
Ishvara Parama Krishna Sakchit Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam.
Chintamani Prakara Sadhana Sukalpa Vriksha.
Chintamani Prakara Satma Sukalpa Vriksha.
Savrite Susurabhira Vipalayantam.
Lakshya Vitesi Suravira Vipalayantam.
Lakshmi Sahasra Satasambhrama Sevyamanam.
Lakshmi Sahasra Satasim Brahma Sevyamanam.
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami.
Venam Vanantam Aravinda Dalayataksam.
Venum Vanantam Aravinda Dayala.
Arhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam.
Param Vrata Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam.
Andarpakoti Niya Visesa Sobam
Gandatmakautikamaneya Vishesha Shobham
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami
Alola Chandrika Lasat Vanamalyavansi
Alola Chandra Kalasat Vanamalya Vansi
Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam
Ranangadam Pranayakeli Kalavilasam
Shamam Tribanga Lalitam Niyata Prakasam
Syamam Tribhanga Lalitam Niyata Prakasham
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamam Bhajami
Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti
Angani Yasha Sakalendriya Vrittimanti
Pasyanti Panti Kalayanti Charam Jiganti
Pasyanti Panti Kalayanti Chiram Jaganti
Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya
Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam
Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam
Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha
Adyam Purana Purusham Navajovanam Cha
Vedesa Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto
Vedeshu Durlavam Adurlavam Atma Bhakto
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Pantastu Koti Satavatsata Sampragamyo
Pantatu Koti Satavatsara Sampragami
Vayoratapi Manaso Munipungamanam
Vayo Atapi Manaso Munipungavanam
Sopyasti Yat Prapadasim Yavicintya Tatve
Sopyasti Ya Prapadat Simkichityatati
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Ekopyasora Chayatum Jagadanda Kotim
Eko Apyasora Chajitum Jagananta Kutim
Yad Shaktirasti Jagadanda Chayaya Danta
Yashakti Rasti Jagananda Chaya Yadanta
Andantarasta Paramanu Chayaltarastam
Adantarasta Paramanu Chayantarashtam
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Yad Bhava Bhavi Tadiyo Manajasta Taiva
Yad Bhava Bhavi Tadiyo Mudijasthataiva
Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhushaha
Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusha
Suktalyameva Nigama Patitaistuvanti
Shukteryameva Nigama Patithastvanti
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami
Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, verse number 20. Sa esa bhagava lingais Chibir etar ahoksa jaha
Vivireter Adokshaja
Swalaksita gatir brahman
Sulakshita Gadi Brahma
Sarvesham mama cheswaraha.
Sarvesham Mama Cheshavara.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada. O Brahmana Narada, the super-seer, the transcendent Lord, is beyond the perception of the material senses of the living entities because of the above-mentioned three modes of nature. But he is the controller of everyone, including me. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.24-25, the Lord has declared very clearly that the impersonalist, who gives more importance to the transcendental rays of the Lord as Brahmajyoti, and who concludes that the Absolute Truth is ultimately impersonal and only manifests a form at a time of necessity, is less intelligent than the personalist, however much the impersonalist may be engaged in studying the Vedas. Engaged in studying the Vedanta. The fact is that such impersonalists are covered by the above-mentioned three modes of material nature. Therefore, they are unable to approach the transcendental personality of Godhead. The Lord is not approachable by everyone because he is curtained by his Yogamaya potency. But one should not wrongly conclude that the Lord was formerly unmanifested and has now manifested himself in a human form. This misconception of the formlessness of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is due to the Yogamaya curtain of the Lord and can be removed only by the Supreme Will as soon as the conditioned soul surrenders unto him. The devotees of the Lord, who are transcendental to the above-mentioned three modes of material nature, can see the all-blissful transcendental form of the Lord with their vision of love in the attitude of pure devotional service. Srila Prabhupada Patita Pavana Ki Jai. O Brahmana Narada, the superseer, the transcendent Lord, is beyond the perception of the material senses of the living entities because of the above-mentioned three modes of nature. But he is the controller of everyone, including me. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, yesterday we discussed something extremely important that we'll just go over very quickly. And yesterday it said that the three modes of material nature are further manifested as matter, knowledge, and activity, or activities. So, the three modes and their further expansion as knowledge, matter, and activities condition or put the eternally transcendental living entity under conditions of cause and effect and make him responsible for such activities. And this is extremely important. This explains how we become conditioned. Although we're eternal souls, living entities, we have nothing to do with the material nature, but yet, due to our minuscule or minute size, we have the tendency to become covered by the veil of material ignorance and consider ourselves fallible, subject to birth, death, old age, and disease, and unbeknownst to us, completely controlled in all activities by the modes of material nature. But we're convinced that this is not true, that we're independent, that we're acting by our own volition without any force, and that we can also dominate some part of nature and people and enjoy these things or these persons according to our whimsical desires for sense gratification. So this is a hopeless situation of illusion. And Prabhupada clearly explains this in his purports, and Krishna explains, and Sukadeva Goswami explains it also to Maharaj Yudhisthira, Maharaj Parikshit, and therefore this is very, very precious information to understand how we have become conditioned and how we are subjected to cause and effect, and we are made responsible for our actions. In other words, Krishna is not responsible for our actions. We are. Krishna is responsible for the material creation. He's responsible for maintaining the principles of religion. Yes, he's responsible for maintaining the whole material creation, yes. But he's not responsible for our activities when we act whimsically and act against Krishna's instructions. We become responsible by the three modes of material nature that are further manifested as matter, knowledge, and activity. And this puts us under the conditions of cause and effect and makes us responsible for our activities. This is further expanded as by the covering power of the material energy. The material scientists cannot look beyond the material causes. But factually, behind the material manifestation, there are what? Adi Bhuta, Adi Daiva, and Adi Atma and Adi Daiva influences or actions at which condition the living entity in the mode of ignorance. And because of that, they can't see what's actually happening to themselves. So this Adi Bhuta, that is miseries of this body, meaning birth, old age, disease, and death. And this Adi Atma, miseries caused by other bodies, which conditions us. As soon as we become attached to other similarly conditioned illusion living entities, we become conditioned by them. We accept responsibility. Like, for example, let's say you're walking down the street and there are hundreds of thousands of people also walking down the same street. Especially, let's say you go to New York during the afternoon time, there are hundreds of thousands of people walking on the sidewalks of Manhattan, going here and there. They have these very large streets and so many big shops and shopping areas, and there's thousands of people walking around, hundreds of thousands. So, but let's say we meet one person, and all of a sudden we fall in love with them, and then we become attached, and then we accept all kinds of responsibilities for that person. This is Maya's trick. And therefore, this Adi Bhuta, the living entities, and we're all subject to birth, death, old age, and disease. And it's Adi Atma, we become attached to other people like ourselves who are subject to birth, death, old age, and disease, and we accept responsibilities, and it conditions us through matter, knowledge, or material knowledge, and matter knowledge, and of course, activities. So as soon as we have some knowledge of things, we begin to act. Like, for example, if you have knowledge of, let's say, using the internet, you become to act on the internet. You start going regularly and getting pinged, like we just heard a ping just now, right? Whenever there's a ping, people look at it right away. And so they're conditioned by these things. And then they get conditioned on the internet by Netflix or social media or news or weather or sports or movies, or those unlimited things that they get attached to. And this is all conditioning. It conditions us. When you get conditioned, it means that you come under the complete influence of the modes of material nature. You're no longer acting independently. You're being forced to do things. And therefore, and then there's Adi Daivika, that's the controlling system. We become controlled by the devas who control the modes of material nature. So this all puts us into material cause and effect and the sense of responsibility of the conditioned actors. So this is leading to this next verse, or today's verse, where it says, O Brahmana Narada, the super seer, meaning Krishna. We see things, but Krishna is the super seer. He sees us. He sees everything we're doing. and everything in material creation. So the superseer, the transcendent Lord, is beyond the perception of the material senses of living entities. Now see, the atheistic scientists and so-called professors and philosophers, they don't accept the superseer. They think that they are the seer. And whatever they see and how they perceive it, and become convinced that their perception is the true perception, they fall into illusion. They don't realize that there's a superseer, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the controller and owner and proprietor of everything. So they don't see properly. That's the whole point. As we've said before, the word for philosophy in Sanskrit is darshan. Darshan means how you see. So if you see through Shastra, which are the words of Krishna and his pure devotees, you will see things correctly. And if you see through the blunt eye and ear, and nose and skin and so forth, you'll make mistakes, or we will make mistakes, and we will not actually see correctly. So anything, and therefore one of the nutshell verses of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which we're going to come to very shortly in this second canto, says that whatever is perceived as being separate from Krishna is actually ignorance. So almost everyone is seeing in ignorance in this material world, because they see things separate from Krishna. That's called the material conception of life. And as long as they are seeing things incorrectly, they're making mistakes all the time. And those mistakes are happening as is explained by the three modes of material nature, further manifested as matter, knowledge, and activity. So when we see things with material vision, and this is the way the scientists see, they see everything as only matter. They don't accept the existence of spirit, or if there is a spirit or a soul, it happens through material combination for them. So because they only accept matter. Well, that is conditioning already, because there's much more than matter in reality. There's phenomenal things that you can see and touch and measure, and there's numinous things that you can't see, touch, or measure, but still exist. So, therefore, the seeing by the scientists and the philosophers and the atheists and the demons is very incomplete, and therefore their understanding of what the purpose of life is also incomplete. Their activities are activities in conditioning or in ignorance, and therefore they waste their life chasing after things that are illusory. Okay, so then in this purport, Prabhupada refers to 7th chapter, 24th, 25th verse. They're very important verses. 24th verse says, Avyaktim vyaktim apanam manjite mam abudaya param bhavam ajananto mamavyam anuttamam. So, what does this verse say? It says that unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly, who do not know Krishna perfectly, think that I, meaning Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable and supreme. So, Krishna is, as it says, Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Puranam Purusham Navayovanam Cha. First of all, Advaita, his body and his soul are one. There's no difference. This is misunderstood by almost everyone. They think that Krishna's body is material, and if he has a soul, that's something spiritual. There's a difference between his body and his soul, but that's not true. He is Advaita. There's no difference between his body and his soul. Advaitam Achyutam, and he's infallible. He doesn't make any mistakes like we do, because he is supremely intelligent and he knows everything. Therefore, he doesn't make any mistakes. We make mistakes. He doesn't make mistakes. We make mistakes because we have imperfect vision. And so, Advaitam Achyutam Anadi, he has no beginning. Advaitam Achyutam Anadi Ananta Rupam, and he has infinite forms. He can expand himself infinitely. We can't do that. Advaitam. So Anadi. So Advaitam Achyutam Anadi Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha. So he has no beginning. He is complete and perfect, and he's a person. And he is Navayovanam Cha. He never grows old. So this is the beginning description of the transcendental qualities of the Lord. And then it says, the Navayovanam Cha, Vedesu Durlabam, Adurlabam Atma Bhakto. It's not possible to understand him simply by reading the Vedas. Vedesu Durlabam. It's very difficult or impossible to understand simply by reading the Vedas. Adurlabam Atma Bhakto. But if you engage in devotional service, you can understand them. So, when you're reading Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, you should also be engaged in devotional service. Then you'll be able to understand when you hear it spoken by bona fide devotees. So this is very significant, because most people think, well, I'll read the book and I'll understand. No. Like, for example, Prabhupada gives the example, there was once an author in India who wrote a book called Sajahan. So when they were reviewing the book, the newspaper people were reviewing the book, they were puzzled. The title is Sajahan, but the book was all about Aurangzeb. Sajahan is his father, right? So they asked the author, when it was the book signing, book launch, they said, sir, there's something we don't understand. You entitled the book Sajahan, but the whole book is about Aurangzeb. What's behind all this? We don't understand. And the man said, yes, because all of Aurangzeb's activities affected Shahjahan. That's why I called the book Shahjahan. Now, you wouldn't be able to understand that if you just read the book. And that's why they asked the question. They said, the whole book is about Aurangzeb. Why did you call it Shahjahan? And then he explained, because if everything his stupid son did affected him. So you have to go to the author to understand what the book is about, actually, right? If you just read the book itself, oftentimes you get a wrong impression of it. So therefore, we have to hear Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam spoken by genuine devotees, and we have to then, because what are we hearing? We're hearing Krishna's explaining himself to Arjuna. And for most people, it's impossible to understand, because we are all under the influence of the modes of material nature. However, if you engage in devotional service under the instructions of bona fide spiritual master and masters, then by the fact of being engaged in devotional service, you can overcome the influence of the modes of material nature, and then you can understand. You see. So therefore, it says, Vedesu Durlabham. It's very difficult or impossible to understand Krishna simply by reading the Vedas. But Adurlabham Atma Bhakto. But if you engage in devotional service, then Adurlabham, then it's easy. Then it's possible to understand the Vedas. Now who is teaching this? Right? The Mayavadis are not teaching this. They say you have to study the Vedas. They don't say you have to also be engaged in devotional service under the instruction of a bona fide Vaishnava guru or gurus. They don't say that. They say, just listen to me. And then they go so far as to say, you don't even need any books. Just listen to what I say. You know, all those are old books. I'm here. I'm present right now. You know. So, or they say, yeah, the supreme absolute truth is the impersonal Brahman. And so again, they're misleading people. You know, and that's what this purport is about. 724. It says, those who are worshippers of demigods have been described in previous verses, in the 7th chapter. Kamaistaistar hitagana papadyante nyadevata, and so forth. That they're less intelligent. And here, the impersonalists are similarly described as being less intelligent in this verse. In the previous verses, especially where it says, second. Yeah, antavatu phalam tesam tad bhavati apamedasam devan deva yajo yanti mad bhakta yantimam api. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of the demigods, but my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet. So in this verse, this is 723, two things are standing out very clearly. One is that the devas are persons, and they have a planet, or they have planets, but they're in the material world, and that they also are basically jivas like us, except they're much more evolved. And they're also conditioned by the modes of material nature. But they're persons. And Krishna also is a person, and he has also his own planet. Right? But yet the Mayavadis say he's not a person. Whereas Krishna is very, very clearly saying he is a person. And he has a planet. And there's no doubt that the devas are also persons. They have pictures of the devas. You know, Indra looks like this, Surya looks like that. And they have planets. So the impersonalists, therefore, are just as ignorant as the worshippers of demigods, because they deny facts that are true, and they make up things based on their speculation. Lord Krishna, in his personal form, is here speaking before Arjuna. And still, due to ignorance, the impersonalists argue that the Supreme Lord ultimately has no form. Yamunacharya, a great devotee of the Lord in the disciplic succession of Ramanujacharya, has written a very appropriate verse in this connection. He says, my dear Lord, devotees like Vyasadeva and Narada know you to be the personality of Godhead. By understanding different Vedic literatures, one can come to know you, your characteristics, your form, and your activities, and one can thus understand that you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But those who are in the modes of passion and ignorance, the demons, the non-devotees, cannot understand you. They are unable to understand you, however expert and such non-devotees may be in discussing Vedanta and the Upanishads and other Vedic literatures. It's not possible for them to understand the personality of Godhead. This is Shrotra Ratna verse number 12. So, here we have a serious indictment of all the demigod worshippers and the impersonalists or Mayavadis by Yamunacharya, who's in the Sri Vaishnava Sampradaya. In the Brahma Samhita, it is stated that the personality of Godhead cannot be understood simply by studying the Vedanta literature. Well, that's the verse 533, 5th chapter, 33rd verse of the Brahma Samhita, which says, Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedesu Durlabam Adurlabam Atma Bhakto Govinda Madi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. It's impossible to understand Krishna simply by reading the Vedas. But it is possible if you read the Vedas and at the same time engage in devotional service with the help and the direction of bona fide gurus, then you can understand. Then you can understand. So, and that's why then Prabhupada says, only by the mercy of the Supreme Lord can the personality of the Supreme be known. So that's actually a verse. He's going to quote that verse a little bit later on in this purport. In other words, you can only understand Krishna by his mercy, not by any mechanical means of study, academia, writing books, making interpretations, whatever. That you'll never understand. There will always be mistakes. Only by the mercy of the Supreme Lord can the personality of the Supreme be unknown. Therefore, in this verse it is clearly stated that not only are the worshippers of the demigods less intelligent, but those non-devotees who are engaged in Vedanta and speculation on Vedic literature without any tinge of true Krishna consciousness are also less intelligent. And for them, it is not possible to understand God's personal nature. Well, if you understand what is the purpose of the Vedas, the purpose of the Vedas is to understand Krishna. So, and that's the purpose of life, is to understand Krishna and then engage in devotional service fully to the Lord, and then you go back to Godhead. That's real education, right? Sarvashicharam hridisanivisto matak smriti jnanam apahanam cha vedaischa sarvir aham eva vedya. The purpose of the whole Vedas is to understand Krishna. However, all the teachers in the schools, all the big philosophers, all the big scientists, they're all speculators, and they don't say this because they don't know it. That's why. They're completely in the throes of ignorance due to matter, mundane knowledge, and mundane activity, and due to being controlled by the three modes of material nature, ignorance, passion, and goodness, and further being under the influence of Adi Bhuta, Adi Atmika, Adi Deva, forms of suffering, and thus dragged down into the world of cause and effect and acceptance of all kinds of responsibilities and duties that have nothing to do with serving Krishna. So it's a very, very severe, horrible situation that we're in. And therefore it says, persons who are under the impression that the Absolute Truth is impersonal are described as abudaya, which means those who do not know the ultimate feature of the Absolute Truth. So Buddha means knowledge, abuddha means ignorance, basically. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that supreme realization begins from the impersonal Brahman and then rises to the localized super soul. But the ultimate word in the Absolute Truth is the personality of Godhead. Modern impersonalists are still less intelligent, more or less intelligent than the ancient impersonalists. Why? For they do not even follow their great predecessor, Sankaracharya, who has specifically stated that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Narayana Paravyakta. In his introduction to his commentary on Bhagavad Gita, right? Shankaracharya wrote a book on the Bhagavad Gita, and in the introduction, he clearly says that Narayana is above all material modes of material nature and all conditioning factors. So he's transcendental. He existed before the creation. He says all these things. And although he preached impersonal philosophy, he was actually a devotee. He's incarnation of Lord Shiva. Okay, so modern impersonalists are still less intelligent, or more less intelligent, for they do not even follow their great predecessor, who has specifically stated that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Impersonalists, therefore, not knowing the supreme truth, think Krishna to be only the son of Devaki and Vasudeva, or a prince, or a powerful living entity. This is also condemned in the Bhagavad Gita 9:11, Avajanti mam mudha manasimtanam asritaha, param bhavam ajananto, mama bhuta maheshwara. So, the fact is that no one can understand Krishna without rendering devotional service and without developing Krishna consciousness. And then the Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.29 condemns this. Atapite deva padam bhujadvaya. My Lord, if one is favored by even a slight trace of the mercy of your lotus feet, he can understand the greatness of your personality. But those who speculate to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead are unable to know you, even though they continue to study the Vedas for many years. One cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, or his form, quality, or name simply by mental speculation or by discussing Vedic literature. One must understand him by devotional service. When one is fully engaged in Krishna consciousness, beginning by chanting the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, then only can one understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Non-devotee impersonalists think that Krishna has a body made of this material nature, and that all his activities, his form and everything are Maya. These impersonalists are known as Mayavadis. They do not know the ultimate truth. So this is a very important purport. And then Prabhupada refers back to the previous verse, Kamaistaistar hitagyana prapadyante nya devata. And those who are blinded by lusty desires surrender unto different demigods. Okay. So, everything that the Mayavadis say are generally wrong and misleading and deter people from making spiritual advancement. So we should never hear Mayavad philosophy. We should never associate with Mayavadis unless they're willing to hear something about Krishna. Then it may be all right. And so the Mayavadis, the worshippers of demigods, and the atheists and the speculators, they're all on the same level of ignorance. And we should avoid their association. Now, that doesn't mean we should not preach to them or try and encourage them to become Krishna conscious, but we should avoid their association. We should, talking about intimate association, eat with them, sit with them, talk to them about nonsense things. That type of association should be avoided completely. But give them prasadam, speak about Krishna, engage them in devotional service, that we can do. If they invite us to somewhere, like for example, there's this one geotech engineer who I had to pay to do some studies so that I could clear the land violations of the Redmond farm. Every year he sent me an invitation for Cinco de Mayo. this celebration that the Latinos do, and the favorite activity is roasting a pig and eating it, right? And then drinking wine and talking nonsense and, like that, dancing, listening to Mexicano music, etc., whatever. So I always declined to go. He asked me one day, so how come you never come to my invitation for Cinco de Mayo? I said, well, I don't eat meat. I don't drink wine. I don't waste my time talking nonsense. So I can't come. But if you want to come to Ananda Mela, you're welcome. Well, he said, well, if you don't come to my festival, why should I come to your festival? I said, because my festival is better. That's why. He did come. But I never went to Cinco de Mayo. He has a nice property, beautiful house, he's a wealthy guy. But we can't associate with people like that. But we can encourage them to be Krishna conscious. Right? Invite, just like I told you, this real estate agent that we helped, that sold the Arlington farm. I invited him to, last Sunday. I explained it already. And I sat down with him and offered him prasadam, and he ate it. He ate everything on the plate. It almost looked like he was going to eat the plate. Like he devoured it, right? And in the beginning he said, this is the first time in my life I've ever eaten vegetarian food. And I said, well, I hope it's not the last. So, we can encourage such people to become Krishna, but we're not going to sit down with them and eat a roast pig and drink some wine and talk nonsense all for hours and hours. That we're not going to do. Okay. So then the next verse, 25, says, Naham prakasa sarvasya yogamaya samanvritaha mudo yam nabijananti mam ebya aloko mam ajam avyayam. So this is a very, very profound verse. And it says, Krishna says, I'm never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them, I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. So when it says avyayam, meaning he is infinite. You cannot come to the end of Krishna's transcendental qualities or activities. So therefore, how can these scientists who are always trying to limit things understand him? At every second, Krishna is expanding his opulences. So as soon as you say, now I understand Krishna, then something new comes up that you've never seen before, because Krishna is avyayam, is inexhaustible. He can go on manifesting newer and newer things that you never even imagined could happen or be. So in this purport, it says that it may be argued that since Krishna was present on this earth and was visible to everyone, then why isn't he manifest to everyone now? But actually, he was not manifest to everyone. When Krishna was present, there were only a few people who could understand him to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you have to be blessed by Krishna himself to be able to understand Krishna. And that blessing will come when we engage in devotional service. So there's so many points to be made here, and we'll have to continue tomorrow. Are there any questions? Okay, I can quickly make one point that I didn't make yesterday, and that is that verse that we discussed 2 days ago, 4th chapter, 24th verse, Brahmartanam, Brahmahavir, Brahmagnir, and so forth. That verse is extremely important because it says how you can transform material things and reveal their spiritual aspect. Okay, so there's a lot more to be said about that, and a famous saying by the Mayavadis is Sarvam Klav Idam Brahma. Everything is Brahma, but they mean everything is Brahma Jyoti. But actually, The real understanding of that verse is explained by 424. And 424 basically says that if you engage material things in the service of Krishna, then they reveal, or then you can see their spiritual reality, how they're connected to Krishna as Krishna's inferior spiritual energy. You'll be able to see like that. So that's the real meaning of Sarvam Klav Idam Brahma. And Prabhupada says, when the Vedic phrase Sarvam Klav Idam Brahma is interpreted in this way, it is acceptable. Well, what is that interpretation? If we spiritualize all our activities by performing every one of them as service to Brahman, or the Supreme Absolute Truth, or Krishna, then these activities become yajna, or sacrifice. So instead of going to Cinco de Mayo and eating a roast pig, we go to Lord Jagannath's Ratha Yatra and chant and dance Hare Krishna and eat prasadam. So now, whatever food was offered, the eggplant, the tomato paste, whatever, now it becomes spiritualized because it's offered to the Lord, and then the Lord offers it back as prasadam. So that is, in that sense, we can understand Sarvam Klav Idam Brahma. So you see, the same phrase used by the Mayavadis has a completely different meaning. But the same phrase through the prism of Krishna consciousness becomes spiritual and transcendental. So this is what is confusing, because the Mayavadis use the same words that we do, but they often have different meanings. And it's the same thing. It's called word jugglery. By word jugglery, you can establish Mayavad philosophy, and most people will accept it. But it's all false. It's just juggling words around. And to understand the real meaning of the words, the real meaning of phrases, and especially these Mahavakyas, these great statements that are in the Vedas, you have to hear the explanation of the Vaishnava Acharyas. Otherwise you'll get it wrong. Because the wrong interpretations, they're existing already in big books of so-called philosophy written by Mayavadis. Okay, we'll stop right there. Of course, the Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.